There you are. There you are. Say something.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Night Skies. Just a second while I finish up a little technical stuff here. There we go. I just wanted to stop sharing my screen. Good evening, everybody. I'm Derrick Pitts, Chief Astronomer at the Franklin Institute Science Museum, your cool astronomer. And welcome back to Night Skies at Home. This is the December version of Night Skies at Home. This is our 49th program, can you believe it? And we're here this evening just having taken a lovely trip up to the moon, where you got to hear Claude Debussy's fantastic piano piece called, what else, of course, but Clair de Lune. NASA put this together, actually. Their visualization studio put together the music along with these fabulous images, such beautiful high-resolution images from the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter that has been in orbit around the moon for a number of years now and is sending us these incredibly beautiful high-resolution images. And I just thought, what a great way to start a program like this. Again, this is Night Skies at Home for December 2023. Thank you for joining us. We have a great program for you this evening. We'll take a few minutes just to bring everybody on board. And while we're doing that, we'll just point out what the program is all about. Number one, we're very much interested in your astronomy questions. So please send us your astronomy questions. And we also would like to know where you're listening to this program. Let us know where you are. What skies are over you tonight as you're listening to this program? And of course, if you send those messages along, my studio producer here, Linda, will take that information and forward it on to me. Say hi to everybody, Linda.
Hi, everybody.
So she's here and ready to hear from you. And please let us know where you are. And if you have an astronomy question, send us your astronomy question. Tonight in our program, we're going to cover a number of topics that are perfect for the season. And for the season, of course, we're right at the end of autumn. It's still autumn, even though some of you have seen snow, no matter where you are. If you're in northern New York, for example, you may have seen some snow flurries. We saw some snow flurries down here in Philadelphia today. Can you believe I actually saw like an hour worth of showers this morning? Yeah, it wasn't too cold, but snow showers that are coming down to us from the lake effect that brings snow. Cold air blowing over warm waters creates what's called the lake effect, in which as soon as the moisture-laden air travels over land again, it drops that out as that moisture out as snow, and it's called lake effect snow. And so we had some of that down here, all the way down here in Philadelphia. That's from the Great Lakes, by the way. So it's a long distance away. But we had some of that today. So we'll talk a little bit about winter. What does it mean to be changing seasons from autumn into winter? You know, that's actually an astronomical thing. So we'll talk about what that is. We also have the winter solstice coming up in just 2 weeks. We'll talk a little bit about that. And we'll also talk about how that particular aspect of astronomy, the change of seasons and the coming of the winter solstice, ties into why we have holidays, why we have the holidays we do at this time of year. So we'll put all this together astronomically for you. So we'll also talk about meteor showers that are available this month. We'll talk about, as I said, your astronomy questions, but we'll also talk about this other aspect of the winter solstice that has to do with sunrise and sunset. I got to tell you, I'm fascinated by this particular one, but we'll put into sequence for you, into the correct sequence for you, how all this progresses as we go from autumn into winter, onto the winter solstice, and then beyond that. We'll put all that together so that you'll have a good understanding of what's happening as you're looking at the evening skies and paying attention to what's happening. Of course, we'll also cover what are the winter constellations. You know, there are winter zodiac constellations, but there's also a special group of constellations that we can readily identify as being the primary constellations of the winter season. We're sort of transitional right now because we still have the fall constellations hanging around. We have the winter constellations coming. And if you stay up late enough, you can actually peer forward into the future a few months and see the spring constellations as well. But we'll put all that together for you. But let's add to that the planets that are visible. So there's quite a bit of stuff available for us to see in the evening sky. And you know, That's what this program is about. This program is about helping you connect to the night sky, helping you as you step out underneath the sky at night to identify what's up there so that the skies become more familiar to you, so you become more connected to the skies. And in fact, it's not that difficult. And in fact, you can pick up a lot of this information pretty quickly. And we'll show you some aids that you can use to follow along after the program, or between programs, I'll say, between now and the next program. But we'll make sure that you have access to the resources that you need to help you learn the night sky. Often people think of it as being too complicated to do, but it really is all about how you go about doing it. We'll explain some of that this evening and get you on your way to understanding the night sky well enough that whenever you step outside, it'll feel familiar to you, familiar enough to you that you can find your way around without too much difficulty. So we'll cover all that in our program this evening. Again, here we are, Night Skies at Home from the Franklin Institute for December 2023. I'm Derrick Pitts, Chief Astronomer at the Franklin Institute, your cool astronomer, inviting you to join us tonight. Thanks for being with us. Linda has some shout outs for us. Thank you very much. What do we have here, Linda? Oh, yeah, great. We have Melissa H., who says, "This is cool." Hi, Melissa. Thanks for joining us. Mike from Montgomery Township. Howdy, Mike. Glad you can be with us. Holly Freeman from Richmond, Virginia. It's a great place. Thanks for joining us tonight, Holly. Lisa Cabrera from South Philly. Yeah, hi, Lisa. Thanks for joining us. Glad to have you with us. Kevin Whitman from Cochranville, near Muddy Run. Yeah, very good. I hope you've been out there. If you haven't been out there, you need to get out there, Kevin. I've been out there. It's a great place. And we'll talk a little bit about that facility too. And Marcia Delorio from New London, Pennsylvania. That's southern Chester County, not too far away. But thanks for joining us, Marcia. Great to have you with us. And anybody else who's joining, let us know where you are. We'd love to find out where you're watching the night skies and where you're listening to this program. So we're glad to have you with us. Also tonight, here's the big piece of the program. Well, not the big piece of the program, but a great piece of the program tonight. We're also going to talk about the brand new Franklin Institute Wondrous Space exhibit. I don't know if you remember me talking about this a couple of months ago, for those of you that have been with us for a few months, but the Franklin Institute has opened the first of a set of new core exhibits. Wondrous Space is the first one of those. It opened just a couple of weeks ago, and I've got to tell you, folks, I've done a lot of work on astronomy exhibits and space exhibits in my time at the Franklin Institute, but this one really stands head and shoulders above all the others. Tonight, joining us as my guests are two people who were directly responsible for pulling this together and are really leading all of the design charge on these new exhibits, the whole set of new exhibits. First, we started out with Wondrous Space. There'll be 5 more that come over the next several years. So we're talking to the two folks who are the key leaders on developing these exhibits. And we're going to talk particularly about Wondrous Space and how that exhibit came together. So if you hang on with us, they'll be joining us in just a few minutes. So here we are, Night Skies at Home. Don't forget, we're looking for your questions. So if you have a question about astronomy, please send your question in. Guess what? That also includes questions that you might have about potential astronomy holiday gifts. So if you have a question about a holiday gift, an astronomy holiday gift, maybe we can talk a little bit about that too. Let's throw that into the hopper of things that we can talk about tonight that may help you out over the holiday season. Let us know. So Linda's going to take all those notes and she'll fire those over to me and we'll get on to those. So let's do that. So let's do a little bit of housekeeping here first. We'll do our sky phenomenon part, just so we can catch you up to where we are. So, sunrise. Sunrise right now at this time of the year, early December, is 7:09 a.m. 7:09 a.m. We have a few more weeks to go before we get to the absolute latest sunrise. But we're right now at the earliest sunset of the year, 4:35 p.m. We've been sitting there since last Sunday. We're going to be there until middle of next week at 4:35 p.m. That's the earliest sunset we can have all year. But guess what happens after that? After the middle of next week, we start adding time back to the day, and sunsets will begin to come later. Yes, sunsets will start to come later about the end of next week we'll start to see a few seconds added on, then a few minutes added on as we head out toward the end of the year. And you'll notice that by the time we get out to right around the end of December, you'll see that the sun is still up much later than it is right now. So that's all part of the Earth's motion on its way around the sun as we head through the end of autumn and on into winter. So that's that part right there. Sunrise is at 7:09. Sunset is at 4:35 p.m. The moon is a waning crescent moon today. It rose at 1:31 this morning, 1:31 this morning, and it's set just after 1:30 this afternoon. So it's already set for the evening. The next new moon comes up on December the 12th, and then full moon comes around on December 26th. So new moon coming up on December the 12th, and then new moon again on December the 26th. One thing you can watch out for with the moon is that the moon actually sneaks past Jupiter and Saturn this month. So first, it sneaks past Saturn on December 17th. So on the evening of December 17th, if the sky is clear, step outside, you'll notice that Saturn is the dot of light, sort of like a star-like object directly above the moon. That's Saturn. But please note that Saturn won't have any twinkle like a star might have twinkle. And then coming up on the 21st, the moon will be just a little bit to the right of Jupiter. And then the very next night, the moon will be just a little bit to the left of Jupiter. So this now makes it really easy for you to find these two major planets of the evening sky, the showpiece items of the showpiece planets of the evening sky, I should say. So that is Saturn on the 17th, and then Jupiter on the 21st and 22nd. You won't be able to miss them. They're nice and bright, nice and steady, no twinkle on either. There is one other planet visible in the evening sky, and that's Mercury. But there's a trick to it. It's very, very low on the southwestern horizon. I mean, really low, right at sunset. So 4:30 in the afternoon, maybe 4:45, very low in the southwest. Mercury is there. It's going to be a real challenge. Mercury is small as it is. It's in a difficult part of the sky to see. However, if you're listening to this program from the southern portion of the US, Mercury's going to be a bit higher in the sky for you, so you might be able to catch it. So anybody in the southern tier of the US might have a better chance of catching Mercury at this time of year than those of us in the north. So for those of us in the north, it's a real challenge. Don't worry yourself if you can't find it. It'll come back to a better position next year. We'll be able to see it a little bit easier, so you can wait until then. In the meantime, Venus is also available to be seen, but not in the evening sky. This is the trick. It's in the morning sky. It actually shows up in the pre-dawn sky at about 4:30 a.m. over in the east. 4:30 a.m. Yeah, well, if you happen to be up and you want to be out looking for it at this time of year, you can do that, or you can wait an hour and a half or so when it's up higher in the sky just before sunrise. Now remember, sunrise is about 10 minutes after 7 in the morning, so you have all the way between 5 a.m. and 7 a.m. to catch a view of Venus over on the eastern side of the sky. Venus is really easy to recognize because it's so bright. You won't have any difficulty identifying that at all. So nice, bright, clear white. It'll be the brightest object you can see over on that side of the sky at that time of day. So for those folks that are up at that time of day, guess what? You've been seeing this object over there. That's Venus you see over there. So don't worry about it. It's not an airplane. It's not a UFO. None of those crazy things. It's just the planet Venus. That's what it looks like in the morning when it is known as the morning star. Of course, it's not a star. It's our next door neighbor planet headed toward the sun. So we're actually seeing Venus in the pre-dawn sky. Great. Okay, so as I said, we've got the sunrise, we've got the moon's, the phase stuff figured out here. We talked about how the moon is going to slide past the two main planets of the solar system, showpiece planets of the solar system, I should say. And we have quite a bit more to talk about, particularly the winter constellations in the winter circle. But we'll get to that in just a little bit. Let's save that for a little bit later. As I said earlier, just a few minutes ago, we have some really great guests with us this evening. We're going to talk about the brand new exhibit at the Franklin Institute called Wondrous Space. So I would like to welcome to our program tonight these two principal people from Franklin Institute and a company called MDSX that were the design team that helped us put all this together. I'd like to welcome Bysshe, the Chief Experience Officer at the Franklin Institute, and also Dan Picard, the owner of MDSX. And it's these two fine people that help put all this stuff together. I'd like to welcome you both to the program. Thanks for coming, Abby. Thanks for joining us, Dan.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. This is awesome.
Super. Yeah, I'm glad you could be here. Okay, so Wondrous Space is this new exhibit that's the first of a series of exhibits coming to the Franklin Institute. But this exhibit, Wondrous Space, has two main sort of theme areas, if you can think of it that way. One of them is the theme area about astronomy, what we see when we look at the night sky, the forces of astronomy that help everything work together, and as well, some idea of what's actually out there in space. So we have that astronomy portion. And then we have another portion of the exhibit in which we talk about what it would be like to work in the space industry, but also what it would be like to actually be on a space trip, to live and work in space. And these are sort of like very, very broad ways of describing, because I'd like you to take some time to talk a little bit more about the gory details of these. So I wonder if one of the things I can ask you both to do, in tandem if you like, however you'd like to do it, tell us a little bit about your conception of how this exhibit, as an astronomy exhibit and a space exploration exhibit, came together in a way that's so different from so many other astronomy exhibits we see in other facilities.
Do you want me to start, Dan?
Yeah, I'll jump in and you can jump in. I think the best part of this is we did this as a true collaboration. We collaborated with the community. We collaborated with the Franklin Institute. We collaborated with like really cool people that are pushing the envelope in space exploration. And I feel like starting with that kind of base, there was a really good conversation to figure out what school groups, what the community, what people really today would want out of a true space exhibit. And I think that's really it. That's the big part for me. It's like we did a lot of listening to really get to these topics that we were showcasing in Wondrous Space. But I'll let Abby jump in too.
Yeah, I would just say, after being to a lot of museums and seeing a lot of space exhibits, I think the one thing that we did very differently is we didn't talk about astronauts and we didn't talk about the history of space. So we really wanted to lean into the future of space exploration. We wanted to talk to people from a wide range of backgrounds and places within the industry, really give people a much broader understanding of all the cool jobs that are in the space industry right now.
So Abby, why would we want to talk about the cool jobs in space? I mean, when people think about space, they think about, being the adventurer out there in space. They think about being the explorer, in the suit out there on some alien planet someplace. Why did we choose to do so much with careers?
I think because there's just a lot of cool jobs that we don't talk about. We always focus on the astronaut, and that's the glamorous kind of end game of a lot of this work. But the people that are at the front of it, designing and coming up with ideas and doing the business development of space design and kind of coming up with all the concepts and selling those to different people, the people who are managing the astronauts and being their kind of event management team. We interviewed people like that, people that are discovering how to get bread in space, because that's been a big issue. So figuring out how to make space bread, which is super cool. I mean, these are things that are happening every day with a lot of great people that don't really get focused on, because we spend a lot of time talking about kind of that star, which is.
Well, I would imagine that maybe one of the other outcomes of this would be that people who are interested in space and space topics or space exploration, but have no real interest in going to space.
Yes.
Maybe they might see some possibilities for them other than just being an astronaut.
Yeah. And I think just you don't necessarily have to be an engineer. There are other pathways into space. So depending on just your interests, there's a lot of avenues that get you into the space industry, kind of beyond the norms that we talk about. And as someone who never wants to go to space, but finds space really cool, the process of it, the design of it, it's an appealing conversation to me.
Yeah, cool. So maybe there's a place for other people who don't
Yeah.
necessarily want to go out there, but still want to be involved somehow.
Exactly.
There's a place for everyone in space. That's what we're trying to get.
That's cool. So Dan, the way in which the concepts have been expressed in the exhibit, not only carry a lot of information about the concepts of the universe, and about what's out there and how it works and things like that, but the exhibits also, provide ample opportunity for people to have a physical experience with this. They can really get themselves into it. It's not just hands-on. In a number of cases, it's full body on. So can you talk a little bit about how your experience with other work that you've done that you could bring to this to help us incorporate, those aspects of a physical experience in space exploration, or understanding the universe?
Yeah, totally. Like at MDSX, we designed for attractions and museums and location-based entertainment. So like we try to pull from the projects like we're working on for Disney and Universal, or maybe even a corporate project. We get exposed to so much technology and experiences. We try to bring that in everything that we jump into. And I think for this project especially, I think there was a really cool opportunity of how could we get some physical kind of experiences that give you that spark that goes like, whoa, that's kind of neat about learning, how high I jump on Mars, or, doing something that like I'm the center of gravity in this spatial area, and you're like trying to like get other planets to orbit around you. We always like trying to think like, what can we do that's different that will actually make people like leave their homes that have tons of technology in there and do something fun at the Franklin? And how can we help augment those cool stories that the Franklin has been telling for a countless of years? And how can we do it and spark and actually do something a little bit different that shows that the Franklin is moving with the times and doing stuff that is different and future forward? And I think a lot of our expertise and bouncing off of the Franklin's internal staff, like with Abby and Eric and the whole design team, I think we really did a really good job. And if you too, Derek, to like talking about how can we do things slightly differently to engage guests, to make them be the next generation of dreamers, thinkers, people that are going to get us into space and devise all these new and cool ways of living and learning from space exploration.
Well, Dan, a lot of a number of components in the exhibit have a rather familiar feel to them, in that they're very like game-like. They sort of are reminiscent of gaming platforms that anybody might see today. Was that a conscious intention to try to make the interface of some of the activities that are done in the exhibit more familiar to our visitors?
I think it's a big part of the design process. Of like, you want to make things that are appealing to guests. You want to make things that are easy to understand, easy to jump in, and games do that a lot. So yes, it was a bit of a conscious effort to actually make the attract of these experiences hook people in, so they all have fun and then realize, oh wow, in this fun experience I actually learned something too. That's always our goal in these. And so having that kind of gamification to it is definitely a big part of what we do. And I think this is some of the stuff that we always talk about, as how can we get people excited about these topics? How can we make them like feel different, like get that little bit of energy, that spark that's like going, hey, I'm having fun here, and I actually have taken away some of this like space content or educational content at the same time. So
cool. Very cool. So Abby, how does this exhibit sort of flow in with or match what the museum's objectives are for how our visitors learn about an often complex and or abstract topic like astronomy and space exploration?
Yeah, there are a couple goals with this. I think one, we really wanted to elevate the design and experience in these exhibits. So that was kind of our first test here with Wondrous Space, is trying to push the envelope and design something that kind of got out of the Children's Museum look and feel and into something that felt a little bit more sophisticated. As we know, kids are seeing sophisticated design all the time. Adults are looking for that sophisticated designs. We really wanted to up the ante as far as that goes. And along the storytelling kind of route with space and these complicated topics, it was really a group effort between content team, content advisory team, design team to figure out how to take these complex concepts and create interactives and media moments that really help break those down and make them accessible and easy to kind of jump into for everybody. So it was a group effort across the board. It's a complicated process, and it takes a lot of information from both the content side and the design side to make something that works in the Science Center.
Well, can you also talk just a little bit about one of those content advisory teams, the youngest cohort of those advisors? Can you talk for a moment about them?
Yeah, so the content advisory team was really great, and we had a wonderful partner with Boeing, and they brought 2 young superstars from their company onto the content advisory team, Brandon Burrows and Amanda, who just were really great partners through the whole thing, and kind of somebody we could bounce ideas off of. They were coming up with cool artifacts and places that we could borrow from. So they were just a really great help with all of this. So it's helpful to have a great team and super smart people that are just really passionate about making something cool and interesting for the next generation.
And one of our focus groups actually did a tremendous amount to guide us in what was important for us to include or not include in the exhibit. And that was an even younger cohort.
Yes, I think kids are the best place to start when you're designing, because they will be brutal, honest, and they're a lot of fun to talk to. I mean, even having the design workshops with these students were hilarious, and it was great to hear from them what their expectations were, and they really cut to the chase when it comes to what they're interested in. It helps us get right to the point and start a framework around what we want to talk about.
Very cool. Now, Dan, for you, my last question is, how does this exhibit fall out for you in terms of, I don't want to say the fun component versus the content component, but how do you feel like those two things work with each other in this exhibit?
I think it's a lovely dance of content and fun. I think the big thing we're trying to do is like hook you with the fun and then get you with the content. And there's a lot of like fun experiments we did in this. Is like making the didactics longer, making the artifacts like a little bit more experiential, like to sink you, to hook you in. Even in some of the normal kinds of space exploration stories, getting these different companies in here, like getting iSpace from Japan in here to showcase their craftsmanship, their design, their like some of their leadership inside some of this, and to show like a more of an international flavor to this exhibit. I think that's the part that I feel like was mission accomplished. That we did a really good dance of like getting the fun and the learning in there in a beautiful, simplistic way that doesn't feel like forced. It just feels natural in there. When you go in there, it's just a really cool vibe that you get. And then the longer you hang out, the deeper dive you will pull out of it. So,
and not that you can pick out or identify a favorite, but if there was one of the exhibit devices that you would want to direct our audience to, can you give a quick description?
I'll go 2 because they're equally cool in different ways. But one I love a lot is Gravity Well, because we worked with Abby's team and Eric Welsh, and that was something that the Franklin had before. What we did was make a Gravity Well 2.0. We just augmented a little bit with technology to boost the experience, and I think that's always a good design challenge. How can we take something that already exists and bring extra value? And I think seeing kids play with that constantly just really gives me the fun factor that I enjoy in designing spaces. And I think the second one to me that's super cool is when you go upstairs and you do rover design. I love that the rover design station has the educational component about learning about rovers, and then you get to test your rover on there, and you have the scenic component right in the center, which is like an icon and looks great. I just think those kind of things, anywhere you could get the passion and energy about the content, along with like a cool wow factor. That's awesome. And those are two that I love to death. But I love them all. I actually like a lot of this.
It's like your children. You can't pick just
Yes,
one.
there you go. I can't pick.
Right.
What is your favorite, Derek? I'll ask you.
Oh, I like them all.
Oh, bravo! That's a
I'm
great
elated with
answer.
all of that. Yeah. Okay, Abby. So can you talk about for just a moment about the aesthetic of the exhibit, the way it looks? We're in a building that's from the 1930s. It has its challenges of various kinds. To be in this day, when buildings are built differently. So can you talk a little bit about how the aesthetic of this exhibit helps it feel a little bit different?
Yeah, I think there's a very different aesthetic on both floors. So there's two different floors, and the floor that's more about being in space and the astronomy piece and gravity and electromagnetic waves has much more of a kind of dark with great lighting kind of look and feel. I'll use the word immersive. You feel like you're really in this more space kind of environment. We use sound a lot, which is super cool. That's something we haven't done before. And I think there's an audio vibe in the experience as well as lighting. Upstairs, we worked with a fabricator that designs all the Nike stores. So it has this completely different look and feel, still great lighting. Also in a gallery that has some really great historic architectural pieces. So working with those, not covering those up, incorporating the design into those pieces. I don't know, it gives it a special flair when you can match that 1930s architecture with a more modern approach to design.
Very cool. I think it's turned out really great. I think it's a marvelous blend of all of those different aspects. We wanted to get into it. And so I'm really excited for all of our listeners this evening to try to get themselves down to Franklin to check it out. And we'll do what we can to spread the word about the exhibit. It's one of our new core exhibits, so it'll be around for a while. You'll be able to enjoy it for quite a few years, and we look forward to having you there. And of course, Abby working with Dan on the next set. Very excited to see how that trend continues of how this exhibit looks. So Abby Bysshe is the Chief Experience Officer at Franklin Institute, and Dan Picard is the owner of MDSX, the design firm that we worked with for this. Please come see this exhibit. You'll find their work to be really outstanding. You'll really enjoy it. Thanks, Abby, and thanks, Dan, for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Derek,
for having us.
Take care, guys. We'll see you.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Right. So let's see here. Kevin Whitman says, thanks for this live feed. Thank you, Kevin. Michelle Lockman is from Philly. She's joining us. Thanks, Michelle, for joining us. Let's see. I see that Mike has a question about the sun corona void. You saw an article about that. I'll come back to that in just a minute, Mike. But I just wanted to say, folks, I think this is this new exhibit, of course, I worked on this quite a lot, was intimately involved in the development and execution of the exhibit. Very proud of how it's turned out. And I think it really turns a corner in how Franklin Institute is doing exhibits these days. And I encourage everybody to come check it out. I think it's one of the best I've seen. Very pleased with how it works out. And of course, I wanted to give Dan and Abby a chance to talk about it. I could tell you volumes more, but I wanted you to hear from them. So come check it out for yourself and let me know what you think of it. So Wondrous Space at the Franklin Institute, brand new core exhibit, just opened. Come check it out over the holiday season. Okay, great. So Melissa, when was I'm sorry, Linda, I can't.
LPR?
When was the LPR launches?
I didn't know what that meant.
Oh, Melissa, I'm going to have to rack my brain to figure out what LPR. If you can send us a note that spells that out a little bit more, maybe we can explain that. Be happy to do that for you. Okay. All right, great. So I'm glad we could talk about the exhibit. Super. Okay, so we have quite a bit of other stuff we want to do this evening, folks. And don't forget, if you have questions, send them to Linda. We'll make sure. Oh, lunar reconnaissance. Yes. And she says, when was the lunar reconnaissance mission launched? Oh, the lunar reconnaissance satellite Melissa, if I had to try to remember off the top of my head, I would say Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter was 10 years ago. This is 2023. Yeah, maybe 2010, 2011. If you go to NASA's website and look up Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, or just do a search for LRO, Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, you'll find all the information. You can also look up on YouTube, if you like, that video that I was running earlier of Claire de Lune. If you just look up NASA Claire de Lune YouTube, you'll be able to find it. It's really gorgeous, worth looking at a little bit further. Thanks for that question. And Mike, I'll get to you in just a little bit, but thanks. Okay, so the other things we have to do this evening, folks, is we wanted to make sure we talked a little bit about the holiday season. Why are we enjoying this holiday season in the way, how is it that we enjoy this holiday season in the way that we do? When we think about it, at this particular time of year, there are a number of celebrations, and there's a common theme across all of them. And the common theme is not the religion, but it's the light part. All of these celebrations that happen at this time of year happen to have light as a major component of the celebration, either candles or burning logs or something of that sort. Now, these days, when we have electric lighting, we sort of de-emphasize a little bit the value of the light that comes from burning a log or burning candles or something like that. But if we look back just a few hundred years, we find out that this is much more significant. And if we look back 1,000 years, we find that it really takes on a major significance because of the level of understanding of how the seasons manifest themselves. And it's very simple. It works like this. All the seasonal stuff that we see throughout the course of the year, that's all tied to the Earth's orbit around the sun. That's really the basic component. It's the Earth's orbit around the sun. At this time of year, the Earth reaches a point in its orbit around the sun at which the Earth is actually at its closest, approaching its closest point to the sun. And during this portion of the year, when the Earth is reaching its closest point to the sun, another interesting aspect of the Sun-Earth system shows up, and that is the tilt of the Earth on its axis. The Earth has a rotational axis that we can say is, if we were to say it was vertical, it would appear like this, but it's not. It's actually tilted 23.5 degrees away from vertical. And that rotational axis tilt is the reason why we have seasons. This is also true for other planets in the solar system. If another planet in the solar system has an axial tilt away from vertical, it has seasons. So the quickest example is Mars. The axial tilt of Mars is also approximately 23 degrees. And because of that, Mars has seasons like the Earth does, except for one small factor, and that is that the seasons on Mars are twice as long as the seasons on Earth. And that's because it takes Mars almost twice as long, a little more than twice as long, to orbit the sun. So each season on Mars is twice as long as a season here on Earth. So if we just round it off and say a season here on Earth lasts 3 months, a season on Mars lasts 6 months. But it's all due to the axial tilt and the planet's orbit around the sun. So does Venus have seasons? Venus would have seasons, except for one thing. It's completely covered in a blanket of clouds. And that blanket of clouds affects how the heating goes on the planet. So there isn't very much change in the climate on the planet because of the way heat circulates on the planet because of the fact that it has this cloud cover. But if it's not vertically aligned, then it does have an axial tilt, then it does have seasons, so to speak. And we could even go as far out as Pluto. And believe it or not, Pluto seems to have seasons, even at its extraordinary distance from the sun of 3.6 billion miles on average. There's even some seasonal change all the way out there. And same is true for the planets in between. So, if you go to any of the planets of the solar system where there's an axial tilt, even in the case of some of the gas giants where the tilt is really extreme, there's still seasons. But let's come back to Earth. So we have a 23.5 degree axial tilt. That's the cause for our seasons, along with the time it takes the Earth to orbit around the sun. So that's the basic piece right there. Winter solstice is that date that we consider to be the one where we actually have the fewest number of hours of daylight. And we have that fewest number of hours of daylight because we're almost at the point where we've come to the absolute latest sunrise, and we've also come to the earliest sunset. So if you look at the sunrise and sunset times, here's how it works out. The latest sunrise doesn't come until early January. Latest sunrise doesn't come until early January. But the earliest sunset has already come. So we've been losing time on either side of that date. But as we get to that date, we're right in the center of that period of time where we've come to the earliest sunsets, but we haven't yet come to the latest sunrise. So while we may be gaining time on the back end of the day because sunsets are coming later, sunrises are still coming later. So we're still losing time on the day. And that's why when we get to the 21st, we can be right there where we have the fewest number of hours and minutes of daylight. And that's what the winter solstice is. It's when the tilt of the Earth has its greatest extreme. And because of that great extreme, we have these fewest number of hours and minutes of daylight. So that's why the winter solstice is what it is. Now, I also say that the winter solstice is not a day, it occurs on a day, December the 21st in this particular instance. And this year, the time at which we reach the winter solstice is 10:27 p.m. 10:27 p.m. So we actually have almost a full day for that last day of autumn, right? But also this makes you think of one other thing. If we're describing a specific time as the winter solstice, we need to remember that, or think of it, that it's an actual instant in time. When the Earth reaches this point, it's an instant in time. And then after that minute passes, well, now we're beginning to gain more seconds on the day. So solstice happens on this particular day at this particular time, after which we begin to gain more time again. The Earth has reached its maximum tilt away from the sun, so the northern portion of the Earth has reached its maximum ability for, I shouldn't say its maximum ability for cooling, but it's reached that point where now we're going to start gaining time again, and the planet will start to warm up. Now, what actually happens is there's kind of like a, how would I say it, a dwell time, if you will. So once we get to that point where we've had the fewest number of hours and minutes of daylight, the planet is still cooling off, and it takes a while for the heat to begin to build back up again. And this is why January and February feel like the coldest months of the year. Even though we have more sunlight, we don't really have much solar gain. So again, things still feel pretty cool. But that's what's happening around the winter solstice. Now, how does this connect with the holiday season? Well, because that day has the fewest number of hours of daylight, this is the time of year when people 1,000 years ago, or 2,000 years ago, or 5,000 years ago might have had some concern that the loss of sunlight might last longer, that it could possibly even be permanent, that the sun might not come back. So rituals were developed to encourage the sun to begin to come back again, to provide longer days, more hours of sunlight. And of course, this is extraordinarily important to early agricultural societies because they needed the sun to grow the crops they need for sustenance. Now, during the growing season, what they've done is they've taken advantage of that sunlight and that growing period to grow all the crops they might need to make it through the darkest portion of the year. But they realize that that's going to run out. So they want to encourage the sun to come back so that they can have another successful growing season, so that they can live throughout the year, so that they'll have food, sustenance throughout the year. So at this time of year, a lot of cultures have used light as a major focus point to encourage that continuation of life through the darkest time of the year, if you will. So you find candles on Christmas trees, candles in candelabra, you find fires in fireplaces, the idea of the Yule log, which was a big log placed in a fireplace at a hearth that would burn all night on this longest night of the year to help people feel like they can make it through the darkest portion of the year. And this is also the reason why evergreens are part of our holiday season at this time of year, because the evergreens symbolize life continuing through this darkest portion of the year. So when you start to look at all these elements and see how they're all connected to this dark time of the year, then you can begin to see how it is that all of these different elements manifest in all of our celebrations across this time of year. Interesting thing I always think is they're all tied to astronomy. It's all because of the Earth's motion around the sun and our human connection to the Earth's motion around the sun, as it's expressed in how we celebrate these holidays using light. So think about that as you're lighting a Christmas candle, lighting a Hanukkah candle. Happy Hanukkah, everybody who's practicing. And also think about, that fire in the fireplace. That too is part of this recognition of this longest night of the year. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the festivals of light that happen at this time of year. Talked about winter solstice, earliest sunset, latest sunrise. Let's go on now let's do a little bit with meteor showers, and we'll talk about the winter constellations that are available. Let me take a break and see if we have any questions. Yes, we have one question. Let me go take a look at this one question. Oh, yes. Mike's question about the corona void. Let's see, Mike, if I can get a little bit more information about that corona void. I can't think that I have actually heard about that corona void. Mike, I'm going to have to say I haven't heard about that just yet. Unfortunately, I hope there isn't a void in the corona. But you know what? Let's talk about that for just a hot second, Mike. Yeah, we can talk a little bit about voids in the corona from the sun. One of the things I'm going to take a stab here, Mike, at what you're actually referring to. The sun has an outer atmosphere. An atmosphere like the Earth has an atmosphere. The outer atmosphere of the sun is called the corona. And the corona is the electromagnetic particles pouring off the surface of the sun. And the corona typically is not visible under normal conditions because the corona is very thin, very tenuous, very faint. A big mystery of the corona, though, is how hot the corona is. The corona's temperature is millions of degrees, much hotter than the surface temperature of the sun. But the corona can most easily be seen without special equipment during a solar eclipse. When the moon passes between the Earth and the sun, as the moon blocks bright light from the sun from reaching a specific point on the Earth, this makes it possible to be able to see the corona of the sun without the bright light of the sun interfering. Occasionally, there can appear in the corona voids due to how the magnetic field of the sun is controlling the corona and how energy escapes from the surface of the sun. So generally speaking, Mike, I don't have a specific instance in mind, but the magnetic field of the sun can control where there might be voids in the corona. In fact, we often talk about holes in the corona as coronal holes. And these coronal holes are manifested by the sun's magnetic field surrounding sunspots or solar flares and prominences, things like that, in which the magnetic field might alter the sun's corona. So hopefully that's what you're talking about, Mike. And there are great ways to actually see coronal holes in photographic images. The Solar Dynamic Observatory Satellite, and the Parker Solar Probe Satellite are taking fantastically detailed images of the sun across a number of different wavelengths. And if you go to either of those websites, you can actually easily find images that show very good examples of coronal holes. Maybe these are the voids that you're thinking of, Mike. These coronal voids are coronal holes that are manifested by how the magnetic field is controlling the shape of the corona. So you might check that out. Okay. Okay, so let's continue on. So we were going to talk about meteor showers. Well, the major meteor shower for this month, folks, is the Geminid meteor shower. The Geminid meteor shower. It's called the Geminid meteor shower because it appears to originate from the constellation Gemini. We'll point that out on a star map pretty soon. But this meteor shower peaks on the night of December 13th to the 14th. It peaks on the night of December 13th to the 14th. And this particular meteor shower is actually now the most prolific meteor shower of the year. Under good sky conditions, with no bright moon, clear skies, and a few people to help you, you might be able to count as many as 150 meteors per hour. That's 50 plus more than the next closest prolific shower, which is the Perseid meteor shower that peaks in the middle of August. So if you really want to see a good meteor shower, if the sky is nice and clear, I know the moon is not going to be a factor. In fact, the moon's is only about 1% full, which means it's setting very early in the evening, so you'll have no problem with the moon at all. As long as the sky is clear, you should take a group of your friends outside that evening and see if you can catch some of the Geminid meteors. Now, the reason why I say take a group of friends is because you as an individual cannot look around the entire sky at the same time. So that's how the meteors will appear. While they seem to emanate from a point in the constellation Gemini, which will be over in the eastern direction, rising above the horizon at around 10:30, 11 p.m., actually it rises a little bit earlier than that, let's say 10 p.m., even though you would be tempted to look in that direction only, the meteors can appear all over the sky. It's just that if you were to trace their trail backward from where you see them in the sky, back across back along the direction from where they seem to come, their origination point would be at the constellation Gemini. So that's why they're called the Geminid meteors. These are actually meteors that are little tiny pieces of dust and dirt in a stream left over from a comet that was orbiting through this section of the solar system. The Earth passes through that stream every year at this time. And as the Earth passes through every year at this time, we get to see the meteors as they fall into the Earth's atmosphere. So make sure you check that out. Now, in order for us to really get a good idea of where that is in the sky that Geminids might be seeing, let's switch over to a star map. I'm going to share my screen so that I can go take a look at the star map. So bear with me while we do the screen shift here. So you'll see some little mechanics going on here in the background. I'm going to share the screen here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come out here. Let's see, where are we? There we are. There we go. Great. Now I'm going to switch over. And hopefully in just a few seconds, beautiful star field on my screen. You might recognize this as Stellarium Web. This is the online star map that I like to use. Everybody can use it. You'll see the URL right up here in the URL search bar, stellarium-web.org. You can use this. It's a really great one because it gives you the ability to shift around your time and date down here in the lower right-hand corner at any time, so you can decide where you want to look. I'm going to boost the date here up to the 14th of December. There we go. I'm going to come back to the night of the There we go. Well, we'll make it midnight just for fun and games. And then I'm going to turn the sky around so that we're looking over toward the eastern side of the sky. I'll get rid of my my date changer there. I'm just going to click and drag to bring us around to this portion of the sky right over here. I'll come down just about like this. Here we are. Now, it just looks like a bunch of dots, I'll bet. But here, let's help things out.
Oh, yes.
Linda says, oh, yes. She's remembering something. So let's first do the constellation outlines for this season over on the eastern side of the sky, east-southeast. So first we'll do the outlines. Here we are. And coming up right from the bottom of the screen up to the top, right through here, you'll see the arms of our galaxy, the Milky Way. Here's the Milky Way traversing the sky right here. You'll see the brightest star here is Sirius. Sirius is the brightest star of the winter sky. But not too far from Sirius, coming up the Milky Way, you'll see Gemini right over here. Well, this is the constellation from which the Geminid meteors seem to be emanating. Now, I'm going to do something a little odd here. I'm going to move us around until we're viewing in the southern direction. Here we are right here. There's south right there. That's where we're viewing right there to the south. See right down there, the letter S right down there. Now, I bring it around like this because this is the orientation you should view the sky through. You should, when you're outside looking at the night sky, you should get yourself pointed toward the south. This means that east is over on your left, west is over on your right. You're looking toward the south. If you set yourself up like this, you'll be perfectly set for what we call the winter circle. The winter circle is a set of bright constellations centered on Orion the Hunter. So here's Orion right in the middle. I'm circling around with my cursor right now. There's Orion right there in the center. And he's surrounded by Taurus above and to the right. Directly above, Auriga the charioteer. Coming a little bit over in this direction toward the left is Gemini the twins. We'll come down below the next constellation to Canis Major, where Sirius is. I should point out that Canis Major is the big dog. This is one of Orion's hunting dogs. Canis Major has a companion called Canis Minor, represented by the bright star Procyon. So the stars surrounding Procyon right here are the stars of Canis Minor, the little dog. Orion has two hunting dogs, the little dog and the big dog. And so now this circle of constellations comprised of Taurus, Auriga, Gemini, Canis Minor, Canis Major make up the winter circle of constellations. Now the other constellations that you see on the map here, Monoceros, Cancer, Lepus, Eridanus, and the others, they are there, but their stars aren't as prominent or as bright as the other major constellations around Orion. So this makes Orion very useful for finding your way around the sky because his stars point to the other constellations. Starting out with the belt stars of Orion, you come right up to this bright star right here. This is Aldebaran. You can see that I can zoom this in. Comes right up to Aldebaran that represents Taurus the bull. We can come right above Orion's shoulder here to Capella in the constellation Auriga. We can come to the two bright stars that are actually very much the same brightness, looking very much the same brightness that make up the heads of Gemini. This is Pollux and Castor make up the heads of the Gemini twins. And as I mentioned, there's Procyon right here, but you can use the belt to come back in this direction to find Sirius. Now, Sirius is not the brightest star in the sky, but it's the brightest star in the northern hemisphere sky. And that's because this star is not very far away. Sirius is only 8 light years away from Earth, just 8 light years away. So it appears quite bright in our sky. You'll recognize it without much difficulty at all. But use this map to help you find your way around. That will make it really easy for you to identify constellations. Now, my one admonition for you, my one guideline or direction for you about learning the night sky, it goes like this. Don't try to learn all the constellations at once. Start with one constellation, like Orion, for example. Memorize what the stars look like, what the shape is of the stars, and then go outside and try to identify that pattern, that specific pattern, but only that one. And once you found it, now you can reward yourself in whatever way works for you. Chocolate, ice cream, whatever it is. But you deserve a reward for having found that. Then the next night, you're going to use Orion to lead you to another constellation. You'll put those two constellations together, and night after night, you can work your way around the entire sky And before you know it, in just a couple of weeks, you'll know all the bright constellations without any difficulty at all. And the other thing is, don't spend a lot of time doing this. Maybe 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes at the most, so that you don't become overwhelmed. That's the key. Sky will be there every night. If you just take a couple of minutes each night, you'll be able to learn the sky pretty quickly. So there's what our sky looks like for the evening. While we're here, let's just take a look at Jupiter over here in the west-southwestern portion of the sky. And this is at right around midnight. What I'm going to do is I'm going to back the time up for us, though, and back the date up for us so we can come right back to where we are tonight. Here we are tonight, and I'm going to come right back to about where we are now, right about there. And here's what the sky looks like outside almost right now. Looking toward the south, we can see Saturn is just coming up above the east-southeastern horizon over here on the left. Sirius is just above the horizon. Jupiter is almost at center stage of the evening sky. Saturn is now low in the southwest. If you go outside under your skies and all you can see are these two bright dots, you'll be seeing Saturn in the southwest and Jupiter directly in the south, with Sirius over on the eastern side very low. Wait 1 hour, and the sky will shift just a bit to the west. Saturn lower in the west, Sirius higher in the east. Jupiter still nice and high and bright in the southern sky. If you use these guidelines, you can learn the sky really easily, folks. Okay, so we've had an opportunity to do that. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to release us from this. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'll come back over to where we are right here. And I see there's a question here from Versia. Hello, Versia. Thanks for joining us tonight. Versia says, should we be concerned about the split in the sun right now? That would be a coronal hole. And the answer to that is no, we don't have to worry about that at all, Versia. The sun has been doing this for billions of years. This is standard operating procedure for the sun. We have nothing to worry about that. Whatever split or hole there might be in the corona, it's not like a hole in the ozone layer of the Earth or anything like that. It's just a manifestation of the magnetic fields on the sun right now, and that will change over time. And it'll get back to something more normal, if you will. So that's typically the way things go on the sun. Melissa asks, would there be earliest sunsets and etc. on other planets? That's a really great question. Melissa, would there be earliest sunsets on other planets? Yes, there would be earliest and latest sunsets on other planets. Depends on the tilt of the axis of the planet and how long it takes that planet to rotate on its axis. So you can have the same set of sort of rotational parameters on another planet as we have here on Earth. Things just might be slightly out of kilter or not exactly like Earth, but you can have very similar kinds of parameters on any other planets. So yes, we can do that. Great. Okay. Fabulous. Let's see. What else do we have to get to tonight, folks? Oh, yes. I should mention that the other astronomy or space-related things that are happening this month, SpaceX actually has 3 launches coming up in the next several days. The first launch is, let's see, let me check and make sure, tomorrow morning, 3 a.m. from Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. SpaceX is launching another series of Starlink satellites. So 3 a.m. is the launch time. I believe you would be able to follow the launch at the SpaceX website. Yes, you could follow it at the SpaceX website or go to the SpaceX website, find information there about where you can follow the launch, and you can do that. That's 3 a.m. tomorrow morning. For those of you that are insomniacs and are looking for something to do at 3 a.m., maybe you want to do that. Now, coming up on Sunday evening at 8 p.m., 8:14 p.m. from Kennedy Space Center, SpaceX is launching a Falcon Heavy launch vehicle for Space Force. I don't know what the payload is. It's a secret payload, but it's one of the larger rockets that SpaceX has available. That's at 8:14 p.m. from Kennedy Space Center in Florida. And then again at 11 p.m. from Cape Canaveral Space Center, right next door, SpaceX is launching another rocket that same evening. So there'll be 2 launches from Florida of SpaceX rockets on Sunday evening. If you go to the SpaceX website, you can find out information for when those are launching and how you can actually maybe follow them online. So check that out and see. Speaking of launching things into space, International Space Station for us here in the Philadelphia area is just about to move into a series of early morning pre-dawn sky launches. So the evening launches are, evening space station passes are pretty much done for this month. We'll next shift over to a series of pre-dawn passes over Philadelphia. And after those pre-dawn passes, another couple of weeks after that, we'll go back to evening passes again. So if you missed this series of space station passes, you'll be able to catch another series of evening space station passes in, I think it looks like early January. You can find that information, though, at a really cool new website that NASA has available. Let me see if I can find it for you really quickly here. I'm sure I can. And it is called Spot the Station. You've heard me mention Spot the Station before, but now NASA has a new version of Spot the Station that you can use on your smartphone that will make it easy for you to recognize when space station will be visible wherever you are. All you have to do is go to the App Store, download the app. It'll take care of figuring out where it is and setting up the times for you to be able to see International Space Station where you are. So make sure you check that out. Okay, folks, we're getting around to the last few minutes of the program here. Don't forget, what you're going to do is you're going to go outside and take a look for the winter constellations. You're also going to look for those planets that are visible at this time of this year, Saturn and Jupiter. And, I think what I'd like to leave you with this evening is one of the really wonderful, I know, there was one other thing. Hold on, one last little thing. I mentioned something about gifts before, didn't I? Yeah, let me share one last piece of information with you. Guess what? If you're thinking about an astronomical gift for someone at this time of year, there's lots of really cool things you might be able to find that might be useful for them. Binoculars are always a great place to start with observing the night sky. If you know someone for whom a telescope might be appropriate, you know what? You might want to start out with a pair of binoculars instead, unless you know exactly what they want in a telescope. And it's also the less expensive way to begin as well. Someone who's just beginning can probably make out pretty well with a good pair of binoculars and a really good star map. And in this way, they can figure out what they want to see, and they can also figure out what kind of telescope might be best for them. Remember, a telescope can be a big investment. So what you want is you want to be able to acquire what's really appropriate for where someone is as they're beginning this with the right instrumentation. The last thing you want to have happen is for an instrument like that to get stuck in a closet and stay there for a number of months or longer because someone isn't able to use it as easily as you might like them to. So it's really important to do that research to figure out what the best instrument might be. So a good pair of binoculars is a way to start. Here in the Delaware Valley, I recommend if you're interested, check out a store called Skies Unlimited. Skies Unlimited in Pottstown. Skies Unlimited is a great organization that has all kinds of astronomical observing equipment that certainly can make a great gift for someone. If you're not in this particular area, the other organization I would recommend is Orion Telescopes. You can check out their website at telescopes.com. Telescope.com. Let me make sure I have that right. Telescope.com. And at their website, they also have a tremendous array of astronomical equipment. And the cool thing is, they have warehouses around the country, and they can drop ship equipment to you even at this late date. So be sure to check them out as well. Okay, so that's just a little bit about astronomy gifts. You can always reach out to me through email to ask me about astronomy gifts. I'll be more than happy to help anybody if you have questions about that. And Otherwise, this is a great time for everybody to get out and start learning the night sky, because the constellations of winter are so much brighter than the constellations of any other time of year. Even though we're right on the cusp between fall and winter, it's still a great time to get out and look, because you'll be able to see those winter constellations as they're coming up above the horizon. Okay, so happy holidays to everybody. Hi, Anne. Thanks for wishing me a Merry Christmas. I greatly appreciate it. Merry Christmas to you too, Anne. We'll talk to you soon. Happy Kwanzaa to everybody. Happy holidays. Have a great time. And join us next month for our next edition of Night Skies at Home. That'll be in January. And
My multi.
oh, Mike. There you go, Mike. I just want to make sure you know that Linda got her multi-pass. Thank you so much for that great gift, Mike. We really do appreciate it. I was really surprised when you brought those to us. So thanks a lot, Mike. Linda says she got her multi-pass. Thank you very much. Okay, folks, thanks for joining us again tonight. This has been Night Skies at Home from the Franklin Institute Science Museum. I'm Derrick Pitts, your cool astronomer. If you have any questions, please reach out to me at the Franklin Institute. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you might have. Have a great holiday. Take care. Be careful. And don't forget, come see the exhibit at the Franklin Institute, Wondrous Space. I'm sure you'll love it. Thanks for joining us, folks. We'll see you next time around. So long. Happy holidays.